Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to the Liberty Report. With us today, we have Daniel McAdams, our co-host. Daniel, good to see you this morning.
Good morning, Dr. Paul. How are you this morning?
Very well, thank you.
Good.
We're going to start off by talking about the military draft. We talk about it a lot because, to me, that is involuntary servitude for each and every country, and we went through the ringer in order to get rid of the principle of involuntary slavery. But not many people on principle are opposed to the draft. Mm-hmm. And many of them, the whole systems continue to endorse the draft even when our draft stopped, because they kept you on the books. You were supposed to register, and if we need you to defend the empire, what are we going to do? We have to be able to draft you. And my argument was, you don't have to be registered for that. It turns out not. The government's going to decide who's registered or not. But we're not going to be talking about ours, even though we've warned about it, that they're capable of bringing the draft back here. But I want to talk a little bit about that. And our friend Lindsey Graham, you would be able to guess which side he's on in this. He's an authoritarian. He doesn't believe in voluntarism. Nope. And authoritarians are the ones who dictate. But even the ones who dictate have to make some decisions and get the people to agree to it. So this is dealing with Ukraine. They're short of people for various reasons. They don't have enough. And in April, they changed in order to pick up more recruits to send off. They've lost a lot of young lives already at trying to use up our weapons so that the weapon industry could continue. In April, they knew a little bit of this was coming, but they weren't drafting people until they were 27. Yeah. So they reduced that 25. And guess what? Your buddy in the Senate, Lindsey Graham, did not like that. That was expanding the field where we could go out and gather up victims. Yeah. And war generally is very deadly, especially when the draft occurs. Think of what was going on. Of course, I listened to the statistics in the 60s, and it wasn't like 100 here, 100 there, or 10 here, 10 there. They were so high, nobody really could pay much attention, into the tens of thousands of people that was killed. But now this is coming up again. They want to draft people, and Lindsey Graham says he wants to well, it's his money, So he wants to tell them, why are you drafting people 18 and under? Yeah. So he's not a friend of liberty for sure, and I think that this is a bad sign, but it also might have something good come of it. It took tragically years and years for the draft and the killing of the 60s to come about, where the draft was canceled, and registration even was canceled for a while. And then they put the registration back on. So the Vietnam War, once it was discovered, the idiocy of it. But our point and theme of our program is, if we see trouble coming, try to warn the people, what's going on. Put the pressure on the politicians not to go into war. And I remember when you and I were doing the fighting, going into the Middle East, expanding the war there, that we thought that we could talk people into it. But the numbers were on our side when it began. But what was overwhelming was the mainstream media and the propagandists, the military-industrial complex, and the super patriots. They were able to reverse that, and then it took 10 years of killing. Then they finally said, well, maybe this draft is not such a good idea. But I'd sure like to be able to say that we have contributed to the interest in the people to pay attention to this. We're seeing little bits of information that people are getting sick and tired of the various wars going on.
Well, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to take a look at Ukraine and Russia and realize that Ukraine is not going to beat Russia in a war. Russia has all the advantages, military advantages, demographic advantages, technological advantages. It's not hard, and people were saying it at the beginning who knew war. People like Colonel Doug McGregor, our good friend, who'd been in war. He predicted what was happening now. Scott Ritter and others that have been in the military and understand war predicted it. It could have been predicted. Nevertheless, of course, the U.S. pushed it. And as you say, people like Senator Graham, not only was he pushing this war down to the last Ukrainian, he was the one behind the coup back in 2014. Remember, he was the one standing in the Maidan saying, overthrow your government, overthrow your government. So he's been involved from the very beginning. But we've seen videos. Well, if you watch the mainstream media, you won't. But I've certainly seen dozens and dozens, hundreds of videos of these notorious press gangs. They go along in Ukraine and they snatch men off the street, put a rifle in their arm and put them on the front line where they're blown away, within hours. The problem is they don't have enough men. They've lost, and looks like now they estimate some 600,000 Ukrainians have died in the war. But that's not enough for people like Lindsey Graham. Put up this first clip. Now, this is from Dave DeCamp a couple of days ago. It's picked up by Hedge yesterday. But as you said, Dr. Paul, U.S. politicians are pressuring Ukraine to lower the draft to age 18. Ukrainian officials said Tuesday, which is a couple days ago, that American politicians are pressuring Ukraine to lower the conscription from 25 to 18 to make more men available for combat, I would say, for churning into the machine. So go and here's a quote from Lindsey, if you put the next one up. You read this quote earlier, it's worth repeating. So right before Zelensky signed the bill lowering the age to 25, as you said, Dr. Paul, back in April, he got a visit from Lindsey Graham, who called for younger Ukrainians to be sent to the front lines. Now here's Lindsey. I would hope that those eligible to serve in the Ukrainian military would join. I can't believe it's 27, Graham said. You're in a fight for your life, so you should be serving, not at 25 or 27. We need more people in the line. Bloodthirsty, bloodthirsty. But the thing is, we pointed out in the show, Dr. Paul, before, anyone looking at it in sort of a general way, 18-year-olds, they should be drafted, whatever, but he doesn't understand the situation. And if you go to the next one, we've shown this graph before, but this is a demographic of Ukraine and people in the age groups. And you can see there on the left is men, and you'll see this huge dip in demographics, a huge dip over there around the age of 18 to 20. There simply are no young men of that age. Now, when you get up into the 30s and 40s, you see that there's a bulge. There are people of that age, but there simply aren't any young men of that age available. And the very few that are left, if you draft them all and they all die, it's a catastrophic collapse of your demographics.
And where do you think they'll go? Will they go to the same place they get their weapons?
Yeah.
Well, let's hope that we're not that stupid, but that doesn't mean we already have them.
Yeah.
We already have our troops over there, but we don't call them troops on the ground. We call them special forces and FBI or CIA agents, and we're very much involved. The war, and I am totally convinced that this activity in Ukraine since 2014 would not have happened without an aggressive support from the United States and lackadaisical attitude about the people letting it go. People now are saying, wonder how anybody could guess that back in 2014 that trouble was coming. But that's a job, and we're here now. The thing is difficult to get out, but now they're still where's the cannon fodder coming from? Well, we know where the cannon's coming from, but what are they going to do to support the troops? And we live in an age when it's technology that's going to fight the wars, and not the troops. But eventually people won't feel really that they have conquered their enemy until they can see their troops on the corner. And there are some that exactly want that. Graham wants to see that, I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, there's something extremely ghoulish about Lindsey Graham anyway, but the idea that he's going over there yelling at them, why aren't you sending more young people to die? It's just awful. And it's, especially when it's become very obvious, the Ukrainian incursion into Kursk has collapsed. Russia has regained probably 80% of the territory. That was supposed to be the big break. That was supposed to be the next big thing. That's gone. They're steadily losing ground in eastern Ukraine. I think Russian troops are approaching Kramatorsk or something. It's very obvious to everyone. And the other thing, Dr. Paul, is we didn't talk about it on the show, but there was supposed to be a big conference in Ramstein the U.S. and our NATO allies, together with Zelensky, solving all the issues and getting. Biden just canceled it. He said, can't do it, can't do it. So this is a symbol, I think, that the U.S. is done with Project Ukraine. It's at its end, but still you'll have hangers-on like Lindsey Graham.
Yeah, there was an announcement today, I think, more money that we're sending up there.
Yeah, another $500 million.
And, of course, the troops are arriving, and it's a continuation of a policy. It's the overall policy that has to be addressed. And what kind of a policy do you have? Do you have one that it defends our national sovereignty, or do we have one where we are morally obligated to be the policeman of the world? In order to maintain the empire, we have to have control of the financial system. But that set of standards is running out of steam. And I just think that we who believe in a lot less government and we believe in voluntarism, we have to take advantage of this time to try to get people to join. And yet, when we hear some positive things, I think I mentioned this to you, some positive things, in the Congress talking about why are we doing this? And yet, when a military, I think since then there was one military vote, and the support for voting against the money was small.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, they talked a little bit, but translate it in there. And I think you might have mentioned, well, maybe the military industrial complex have watchmen out there checking up on each congressman.
Yeah, well, that's what Thomas Massey said. Well, the next story we want to talk about is something that we both saw on Zero Hedge. In fact, I reprinted it on the Ron Paul Institute's website today, and I don't have the main clip here, but essentially Netanyahu's Likud, that's the political party that he runs, they organized an event in Israel promoting Israel's post-war resettlement of Gaza. And we were told that this was an anti-terrorist operation. They're just going in and taking out Hamas. Well, then why are they holding conferences saying how we are going to resettle? Now go to that next clip. I don't have the first clip, but go to the next one. You can see this in Hebrew. Well, Israel's wartime government has maintained that its position in the war in Gaza is aimed at vanquishing the specter of terrorism and destroying Hamas. And I highlighted this: the ulterior motives driving the conflict have begun to seep through the cracks in the foundation of that argument. The revelation that Netanyahu's party, Likud, is coordinating a conference titled Preparing to Settle Gaza conveys the true endgame of Israel's ruling elite. And there is a flyer to attend the conference. It does remind me, Dr. Paul, of the neocons back in around 9/11. Remember when, I forget which one it was, who said, never let a crisis go to waste,
Right. Lately, in recent time, the marching orders is Israel is, deserving of their old property line. This is Greater Israel. And I keep thinking, I can't find it, but I'm not the best historian in the world. I'm looking for the outlines and how long did Greater Israel exist, and where was that, and where were the non-Jews at that time? And you don't really get it that much. But Netanyahu, who's appointed finance minister, made a comment on this. He delivered a speech behind a podium which did praise Greater Israel. So wonder what it is. Is it just getting Gaza back? Do you think that's it? No. He quotes, this is his quote, Greater Israel encompasses the entirety of Palestine, the entirety of Jordan, parts of Iraq, Lebanon, Syria, Egypt, Turkey, and Saudi, and then more. Yeah. So Greater Israel is a really big place, but just trying to understand, if you didn't have any of the international organizations like NATO and United Nations, how would people look at this? Do they have a map that they can come out and show where it is, and that's what we want to restore, or what? But I'm amazed that that there's nothing bashful about that, because that means from their viewpoint they believe this to be the case. Problem might be like the United States should we had some infractions in putting our country together. Somebody might argue that, well, maybe we should have independent states. Like independents voluntarily coming together. Boy, now that's radical. So, but at least that's what was some of the original intent.
Yeah, well, we actually have that tweet from Smotrich. If you can put that up, this is him. This is the finance minister. He's one of the more radical members of the government. But here's Netanyahu's appointed finance minister, Smotrich. He delivers a speech behind a podium which displays Greater Israel. You can see that now on the podium, and then you can see on the map what they mean when they say that. As you say, Dr. Paul, not only the entirety of Palestine, but Jordan, Iraq, Lebanon, Syria, Egypt, Turkey, and Saudi Arabia. If I were those countries, seeing how they've pummeled Gaza, Dr. Paul, and how they're destroying Lebanon, we showed yesterday how they blew up a whole village with one flip of a switch. If I were these other countries, I would be a little bit concerned. But I think ultimately the position that we would have would be, if this is what they want to do, go for it. But we shouldn't have sent a penny. We shouldn't have sent a single bullet. It's up to them to do it. They're basically fighting on our dime with our troops even.
Yeah. The time people are trying to sort all this out, you can't pinpoint, but there's the map. We see the map, so we know there was a map. But that of course, doesn't give us a date. It existed from this time to this time. But what I think is important is that the division, the getting along with each other, and an effort to avoid constant wars is quite a bit different, because internationalism came about in the progressive era, and we couldn't wait to get involved in World War I, and then they had the Versailles Treaty, and that's when it all started. We wanted to get on the action and participate in the division, but that wasn't to restore the debate of, well, we have to get Greater Israel involved. I mean, that was not discussed. And then in 1948, same thing again, following World War II. What are we going to do? And they go and they were more aggressive in trying to define where Israel was. But even now, it's the same story. How are we going to divide these countries up? And they deserve. I think that people deserve to express themselves. How they solve the problem is the big issue. Is it going to be? One thing is, I think the worst thing is one narrow group of countries like the United States and maybe somebody else getting together and creating NAFTA, and also the United Nations coming together, and they will sort it out. Well, that doesn't work, and so this is ongoing. But I put the blame on this goal of globalism. But then the argument goes, who are going to be the leaders? So Lindsey Graham, president of the global organization.
Well, as non-interventionists, we wouldn't presume to tell Israel what it should do, how it should behave, what its borders should be, who it should elect to office. But at the same time, it's not our responsibility to underwrite everything that they do, which is what we've done. Now, Italy announced yesterday a complete 100% arms embargo on Israel. We don't like what you're doing in Gaza. You're killing tons and tons of innocent people. Not another gun, not another bullet. Now, if the U.S. did that, we'd be in better shape. But we're doing the opposite. And in fact, just today, the troops and the weapons arrived in Israel from the U.S. And we have a video clip. And I did send you back there an additional email with one photo, bonus clip. I know it's late to see if you can find it, but if we can cue up that video first and have a look at the arrival of U.S. troops, combat troops, going to combat in Israel, and then meeting with Netanyahu. Let's watch this arrival here.
Watch it here. I don't want you guys to trip. This generator is a 3K generator. It powers the system, and it also
we can take it off now. This is you can see the smile on Netanyahu's face, Dr. Paul, because
he
now
looked very pleased.
Yeah, the cavalry has arrived, and there they are. And I don't know if you have that bonus clip. If you don't, it's not a big deal. I just wanted to make the point that he's also got this. Here we go. Here's Netanyahu taking a selfie with U.S. combat troops going into combat. They will be targeted because they will be operating those THAAD missile defense systems, Dr. Paul. So they will be targets of any incoming weapons. Every young man you see here, I think there's a young lady there on the right too, have a target on their back. They may well, unfortunately, sadly, not make it. And this is not our war, so we shouldn't be doing it.
You know, at times I think they're overconfident. The markets are overconfident. $35 trillion worth of debt, and it's ongoing. No signs that it will ever slow up by either party. And they seem very confident, and they're very calm about that. And there seems to be no fear whatsoever. But it's going to be the recognition that we can't afford the empire, and we can't come to the rescue. We can't do this. We can't send the weapon. And then they say, well, we'll just have you send some troops, more troops.
Yeah.
You know, not just 100 here and 100 there. We'll really need your help. So this, I'm amazed at how confident the markets are right now, but if you look between the lines, the markets aren't quite as strong as the government reports are. There's always a loophole, you know, in the statistic that they show, and this is the kind of stuff that's they're not going to turn this off.
Yeah.
Well, if tomorrow he said, well, everybody should take, you know, the DOD budget's too big. So let's look at each thing that we're selling, that we're you know, financing. Why don't we take 2% off each one of these and save the money? Can you imagine?
Oh.
Can you imagine cutting anything? Can you imagine cutting a nickel?
No.
It wouldn't happen. There'd be so much hysteria, and that's why they have to resort. They have to cut. It's inevitable they have to cut, but they cut by cutting the value of the dollar.
Yeah.
So the real value goes down, and that's why the connection between prices going up and solving these problems is very important, because people don't want to think that way. Now, the people who are receiving, the people who are passing, they're quite happy. What do you need? Oh, we'll print that money, and deficits don't matter, and on they go. But there will be a day coming.
Yeah. There's a misconception that spending equals better defense. And that's not the case. We didn't talk about it today. We thought about talking about it. This Raytheon case where they got a huge, like $1 billion fine for cheating and doing all sorts of terrible things, you know. And so we spent a ton of money. We spend more than the rest of the 10 other countries combined. Yet here we are. We basically put everything we could in this war against Russia and lost. So just more spending doesn't mean you're defending yourself.
Can you imagine? They're in on part of the gravy train, and they still have to cheat.
They still have to cheat. Well, anyway, I hate to do this, we're going to end the show today on a sour note, which is an outrage, but we have to talk about it. I would say outrage of the day, outrage of the week, maybe outrage of the month, but it's
historic.
It's sick, and it makes us both very angry. Put on that next clip. Very sad. I mean, this really hits hard. Pro-life mother begins 3.5-year prison sentence after Biden-Harris Department of Justice threw the book at her. Now, what did she do, Dr. Paul? Did she rob a bank? Did she, no. She peacefully protested outside Planned Parenthood in New York in June of 2020. And now there's a wonderful young family, little girl there. I'll go to the next one now. This is a tweet about it from Publius. Attention, Americans. Kamala Harris's Department of Justice is sending a black woman to prison for 3.5 years for peacefully protesting outside of an abortion clinic.
You know, to do this, they have to reject the lack of desire to define life, is how important is life, and when does it become useless and you can throw it away. And you have to address the subject of rights. When do rights accumulate? And it just turns out that fetuses have rights because they have inherited rights. So that is there. And it also, in order to go through this kind of stuff and punish people like this, you have to reject even the hint of natural law, because maybe somebody would say, yeah, maybe we should guide somebody and they can't demonstrate here or something like this. But to get people like this and put them in prison for 3.5 years, it's so criminal. You know, I've tried to simplify things in my thinking, and sometimes it helps me, and other people say, what are you talking about? But I think the simple thing is to solve a little bit, or to move the debate along a little bit, is that anytime we talk about this issue in a debate, I would say define abortion.
Yeah.
Define it. Well, I define it killing of a live fetus. Can you imagine what would happen if you, every time, what if you were allowed to use pictures to show what you want to do? It's ghastly. So that wouldn't be nice. That wouldn't be etiquette, you know. So but if you define it what it is, it's killing a fetus that has justified itself in legal terms in many ways, because if you injure a fetus, you know, a car accident or anything, you're
Drunk
liable.
driver,
You're liable. What if a doctor gives the wrong medicine and damages a baby? You know, they're liable as well. But you know what they've narrowed it down to? And Pelosi's the worst at this. What we have to do, and what they've done, is they've destroyed reproductive freedom. You know, when you think about it, it's not even talking about reproduction, because if anything, doing a lot of abortions is destroying reproduction. And sometimes there are complications from it that prevents it. So, but it's always, who would ever attack reproductive freedom? They're going to take away your birth control pills and everything else. And so just those two things, define abortion and maybe clarify this whole thing about what, this is not about reproductive freedom. This is about, you know, maybe they should have a little hint of an understanding what natural law is all about. But also, most governments throughout history have, once they recognize that there is life, that if anything, governments are supposed to protect life.
This is the politicization of justice. She was on the wrong side of Kamala's political views, you know, and that's why she threw the book at her. And, you know, I mean, I have 3 kids, and I look at that little girl, she looks about 5. Losing 3.5 years of your mother at that age is so critical. You know, you go from being just a post-toddler to being, you know, 9.5 years old. You miss all of those years. Now, you said there might be some reasonable penalty if she was doing something that was untoward or whatever, but 3.5 years, you get less than that for murder, you know, in some of these places.
And you know, the demonstrators, the pro-life demonstrators, that usually they stand there very calmly and they just make a presence, and they will have a conversation if somebody wants to have a conversation with them. But who wants to have the conversation? It's the thugs who are the authoritarians, who want to ridicule and want to destroy the principle of natural law and that life is valuable. And that is the reason why this is getting worse. I can't. What I have trouble understanding is how people could spend so much money and time and energy making sure you can't kill a fetus. You know. Or that you can kill a fetus. They spend all the time. Oh, that's just a natural right. So. And I think it can, well, anyway, it does get complicated. There are complicated cases. I have been exposed to people who have had tragic problems happen, but believe me, it isn't done by making abortion for 9 months, you know, perfectly acceptable morally. You know, and there's been some people in the Right to Life movement that got very, very tired of fighting this issue by legal laws and all this, and they do it just on a moral issue that it's wrong, and that's what really has to happen eventually. People have to see this as a right or a wrong.
Exactly. Well, let's look at a tweet from the young woman. Bevelyn Williams is her name. Now, if we put that next one up, She tweeted this out not long ago. She said, "This is my surrender paperwork. I just want you guys to know that what the media said about me being violent is a lie. My category of offense is unlawful assembly. Please share this. People need to know the truth. 41 months, 3.5 years for unlawful assembly under the Biden-Harris administration." It's unconscionable, Dr. Paul. And here's the last one, though, and this makes me wonder, this is not why they really persecuted him. This last picture, well, it's heartbreaking. Here's a little girl with her mommy, and she tweets out, "Waiting in line to vote with my wife and daughter, Trump 24. So this is a black family that's the Trump supporters, and I think that would infuriate people like Kamala Harris and make them want to throw the book at her even more.
You know, when you think about the charge, what they're attacking is the First Amendment.
Yeah.
Because assembly is supposed to be a protected right. Yeah. And they weren't invading people's property. They were probably standing out on a sidewalk or something, but they didn't invade somebody's building or disrupt the newspaper or something like that. But it was assembly, and they admit it's assembly. Yeah. And once again, this is part of the attack on the First Amendment. So they're going to ruin her and scare other people, and that's what their goal is: intimidation and frightening these people. Sad case.
Yeah, hopefully.
But it's not been resolved yet.
Yeah, and I think she has a fund to fight this, so people who are interested in helping her out, they should probably
You'll wonder about what the appeals will be like.
Yeah, hopefully she doesn't spend any time away from that kid, a little baby. I'm going to close out by thanking everyone for watching the Likud Report. My Thursday is other people's Friday, at least when it comes to this show, so I won't be back tomorrow. That'll be my good friend and colleague Chris. So I want to thank you all for tuning in this week. Please hit that thumbs up, like, or whatever you can to help us spread the show around, and hope to see you again next week. Dr. Paul?
Very good, and I want to thank everybody for tuning in today and ask once again that if you have an opportunity, spread the message, because I believe that the spreading of ideas is really the most powerful tool that we have. And yet it is difficult, and one reason is, and we've mentioned in this report today, that the attack on assembly and First Amendment rights makes our job much more tough. And that is what's happening. People feel intimidated. How many doctors felt intimidated by the rules and regulations on COVID? You know, they didn't want their reputations ruined. Then they use this. This is a tool. Put fear in the hearts, and people get frightened. And then there has to be some brave souls that will speak out and argue the case for voluntarism. Problems exist, but they should be solved by a principle of voluntarism and the rejection of the use of force to have it your way. I want to thank everybody for tuning in today to the Weekly Report. Please come back soon.